Welcome to Nitty Gritty Real Estate. In this series, we're interviewing Matthew Cox. He's infamous for committing millions of dollars in mortgage fraud, for which he served 12 years in prison. He has an ugly past, no doubt, but we're looking beyond that to learn from his unique perspective in the industry so that we can become better real estate investors. Let's get into it.
All right, so an owner occupancy scam is something that once again, there's different variations. I could go all day because people do this all the time. Mm-hmm. And I'll go with two different ones. For instance, I actually had a realtor one time was buying six duplexes. Well, she didn't have the money to put down on the duplexes, right? Because she doesn't want to put down. If you're buying an investment property, on average, you typically put down, obviously there's different programs, but on average you're putting down 20%. So if you're buying a $100,000 piece of property, you have to put down $20,000. Well, if you're buying 6 duplexes for $100,000, that's $120,000. That's a chunk of money. Well, she wanted to put down as little money as possible. So she came in and we talked to her and I said, look, if you say you're living in the places, some of these places I could get her 100% financing on. If you say you're living there, some of them were 95. So instead of putting $120,000 down, you're going to end up putting down, 40 grand, 30 grand. So she was like, oh, that's what I want to do. So what I did was I sent each one of those loans to a different lender. And with each lender, they believed she was owner occupying each and every one of those properties.
Each one, yeah.
Right. So what she was doing was, one, she's limiting the amount of money she had to put down. And two, she's limiting the risk for the lender, because the lender believes that she's low risk of actually foreclosing because she's going to live in the property. Because people will stop paying for their investment properties before they will stop paying for the property they live in with their family. So anyway, we closed the loan with 6 different lenders, and she put down very little money, and she acquired all of the properties. So that's one way. That was a very overt way of committing owner occupancy fraud. And it's absolutely fraud. And people do it all the time. An inadvertent way of doing it, and this happens a lot of times too, is that I've known people that have gone to buy a piece of investment property, and the realtor or the loan officer will suggest, hey, if you want to put down less money and get a better interest rate, you could always just say you're going to live there. And they're like, oh, okay, cool, that's not a problem. Yeah, do you mind saying that? No, I'll say that. They don't really think what they're doing is fraud. They don't actually think, hey, what I'm doing right now is I'm committing fraud to the tune of $100,000. Because they think, well, I am going to make the payments, and what's the big deal? And I don't see that it's going to be an issue. And what the fact is that you're at a higher risk. The lender's taking on a higher risk, and they're lending you the money at a lower interest rate. So you really are committing fraud. It's fraud that happens all the time. It's a common fraud. It's an easy fraud to commit. And that's essentially owner occupancy fraud, and it's illegal.
Out of curiosity, do you remember what the realtor's attitude was like when she was getting those loans? Like, was she aware that she was doing something?
She was absolutely aware. Listen, I've done that I had a sheriff's deputy one time. We did like 8 duplexes that were all owner occupied. She said they were all owner occupied, and we closed them all at the same time. All 8 different lenders, and she absolutely knew they were fraud. This is the guy her husband was a sheriff's deputy. I mean, I've had lawyers that committed, not necessarily. I had a lawyer that committed owner occupancy fraud and bought a property that he ended up using and was going to use for his law office. So from the very beginning, this is my law office. I'm essentially he was getting a residential loan on a commercial piece of property. Mm-hmm. And he was saying he was owner occupying the property that he never intended to owner occupy. He was a lawyer. Mm-hmm. I've had doctors the people that commit fraud on a daily basis throughout the United States, you would be shocked. You always think, oh, it's some kind of guy who's lower middle class and no. Absolutely not. It's everybody. In the right situation, people will commit fraud, especially if it's convenient and they don't feel like that they're really doing anything wrong. Well, when the economy crashes and you lose your job and you can't make the payment and the place gets foreclosed on and you lose $50,000 of Bank of America's money and the FBI comes and gets involved, now you realize how serious it is. Listen, it was always serious. It was always a fraud. It was always fraud. It was always a scam.
Matt, what do you think about it too? Are there also people along the process that also help enable the scam because they also have an incentive? If the loan closes, they're going to make money.
Oh, of course.
If the loan doesn't, they don't.
Absolutely, of course. Title companies, appraisers,
Real estate agents,
loan officers. Yeah, yeah. They're all.
They all have incentive to make this close no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
They might spend weeks and weeks showing a buyer property, and they want to have some money come out of it.
Yeah, of course. Of course.